If you could only achieve one thing in the next 12 weeks to have a successful 12 weeks, what would it be? By the end of this podcast or video, wherever you're watching it, you're going to have 3 tips for identifying a top priority. I'm Jono White, the founder and principal consultant of Clarity. We work with leaders all around the world. And welcome to the Leadership Question of the Day podcast. And as I said at the start, the question for today is, if you could just achieve one thing to be successful in the next 12 weeks, what would that be? As always, thank you so much for subscribing and following and liking and sharing. It really helps us to get the word out so that more leaders can become the best they can be. So thank you very much for that. And if you haven't done that, if you could right now, follow, subscribe, like, share. It really helps. Thank you. The reason I ask you this question, this is a Patrick Lencioni question, and it's the question he uses with teams, and it's the question that I use with teams. It's the question I use in coaching to help people identify a top priority. Why do we need a top priority before we jump into the 3 tips? Because if something's not most important, then everything is most important, and if everything is most important, then nothing's important. And that's the problem for if you don't have a top priority, and this gets more and more complex with every layer and with every team involved in an organization. So if you're an entrepreneur and you're by yourself, then believe it or not, it's actually easier for you to align, because as long as you can just nail down a top priority and chase it, you're going to be pretty good. But for a large organization with multiple layers of teams, it's obviously a lot harder. But the difference is significant. If you're leading a large organization, then I believe you should always have a top priority for your leadership team, and you should have a top priority really for your organization that people are bought into. Excuse me. So let's go through these 3 tips for identifying a top priority. And remember the question that we're looking at today, which is really the question that is most helpful to identify this, is if you could just achieve one thing in the next 12 weeks to have a successful time, what would that be? So when it comes to a top priority, let's do a little bit of reverse engineering. The first tip is what's the really big project, the non-negotiable that you need to land right now? Often this top priority focuses around a non-negotiable. Sometimes this non-negotiable bottom line big pillar is already there intuitively, but articulating it is really powerful. So for an entrepreneur, that might be, or for a small business, it might be cash flow. You might have 10 things you're focusing on as a team or as a person, but it might be helpful for you to realize, well, actually the non-negotiable is we have to move our cash flow from X to Y in the next 3 months. Otherwise, it's pretty much game over. So that has to be our top priority. Easy, and that's legitimate. The second, for you as well, it might be in a large organization. Yes, you have a lot of things on your board, but there's a intuitive sense that if you don't get the sales moving in the right direction, then things are really, you're going to feel it, maybe not now, but in 6 months or 12 months. And you sort of know that already, but that's the obvious non-negotiable big pillar. I wonder if there's a non-negotiable big pillar in your world. The thing that's sort of keeping you up at night, the thing that when you stop and think about it, yes, that is the thing that we have to work out. So that's the first tip. See if there's a non-negotiable big pillar and just articulate that. This is the top priority. That it doesn't sound like much, but just doing that is helpful. And you'll know what I mean. You'll get a couple of months down the track and go, wow, I've really worked smarter and harder around that thing. Why? And part of the answer is because you've just articulated that it's the most important thing in your world. The second tip I want to give you is to use your team. Use your team, and if you don't have a team, use some people around you. Get some people who are on the journey with you to sit down for a couple of hours at a cafe and brainstorm this together. Get some external people. It's much easier if you have your own team. So if you're a small business and there's 5 of you, get the 5 of you together a couple of hours or an hour early over a coffee to start work one day and sit down and ask this question. Hey, guys, I was listening to this podcast. He was talking about a top priority. If we could just achieve one thing to be successful in the next 12 weeks, what would it be? What do you think? And then brainstorm what they write down. You'll be shocked. The reason it's so helpful to do this in a team is that it shows where you're lacking alignment. we assume as leaders, we're all on the same page, and then you do an exercise like this, and you go, oh, we're not. But very quickly you can get on the same page, because as soon as you share a couple of notes with each other, oh, really? I don't think that's as important as this because blah, blah, blah. Suddenly we've now moved a step towards each other in terms of being on the same page. So that's the second tip, is to actually look to use the people around you and use a team. The third tip when it comes to identifying a top priority is I want you to think, sometimes, particularly for entrepreneurs, I think this can be challenging. So the third tip I want to give you is to think about what would be a game changer. Think about the game changer. Okay, what would be a game changer? Because the first tip was around there might be a big non-negotiable, getting our cash flow sorted. The second tip was around using a team to help you in this process. But the third tip is to actually stop and think, what could be a game changer? What one thing, if you could actually nail that, would change everything? Sometimes there's nothing great that comes out of that question, but sometimes you'll actually realize, you know what, if we could actually sort out that IT system issue that we have in the next 12 weeks, I reckon that would launch us. And that might be a helpful way to identify your top priority. If that's helped you to get clear in your leadership in any way, then please comment below wherever you're watching or listening to this with the word clarity. Everything we do is about helping people get clarity. And once again, thank you for subscribing, following, liking, and sharing. And if you haven't done that, please do that now. It helps us get the word out so that more leaders can become the best they can be. Check out consultclarity.org, and there should be some info below in the description where you can click through and do some of our free scorecards, find out how you rate as a leader, find out your leadership style. That's all free. And we've had more than 1,000. Yeah, that's right. More than 1,000 leaders have done the 7 questions, which is crazy. So there's so much content up on consultclarity.org to help you as a leader. So go and check it out, and thanks for watching or listening, and I'll catch you next time. Cheers.